Chapter 2 Part 2. I wish to say something. I took some food from the blacksmith's over yonder. My convict then turned his eyes on Joe. Are you the blacksmith? He said. I'm sorry to say I've eaten your pie. God knows you're welcome to it, said Joe. We don't know what you have done, but we wouldn't have you starved to death, poor fellow. Would we, Pip? We followed the soldiers in there, prisoners to the landing. We saw the black prison ship lying offshore like a wicked Noah's Ark. We saw the two convicts rowed out and taken up the side and disappear. Then the torches were flung hissing into the water. I never told a single living soul about my convict. I loved Joe, and the fear of losing his trust tied my tongue. First I had been afraid to avoid doing wrong. Now I was afraid to do what I knew to be right. When I was old enough, I was to work with Joe in the forge. Until that time I did odd jobs. Any money I earned went into a box on the kitchen shelf. A village school for children met each evening. It was run by an older lady who napped through most classes. With the help of a girl named Biddy, the lady also kept a little store. Biddy was an orphan like myself. Her hair always wanted brushing, and her shoes always wanted mending. With Biddy's help I learned the alphabet. One night, sitting in the kitchen with my slate, I wrote a note to Joe. I think this was a year after our hunt upon the marshes. I worked an hour to print this message. Me dear Joe, I hope you are witty well. P.I.P. Joe looked at the note with pride. I say, Pip, old chap, what a scholar you are. Why, here's A.J. and A.O. J.O. Joe. Why don't you take me in hand, Pip, and teach me to read? But Mrs. Joe mustn't see what we're up to. Oh no, she would not be happy about my being a scholar. Mrs. Joe had gone to market with Uncle Pumblechook that day. Joe made the fire and swept the hearth. Then we waited for the carriage. It was a dry, cold night. Here comes the mare, said Joe, ringing like a peal of bells. Mrs. Joe and Mr. Pumblechook rushed into the warm little house. Now, Mrs. Joe cried out, if this boy ain't grateful this night, he never will be. Miss Havisham wants him to go and play there. So of course he's going, and he had better play there. My sister frowned at me. I had heard of old Miss Havisham. Everybody had heard of Miss Havisham. She was a grim old rich lady who lived in a big, gloomy house. She never came out. I wonder how she comes to know of our Pip, said Joe, surprised. Whoever said she knew him? Cried my sister. Uncle Pumblechook rents his office from her. She asked if he knew a boy. Indeed, he knows that this boy's fortune may be made by his going to Miss Havisham's. He will take Pip to town tonight, and to Mississippi